So, Bill, I know you're in several halls of fame, but I'm wondering what the reaction was like and what your emotions were like when you learned that you're going into the College Football Hall of Fame.
Well, I was really surprised because a couple years earlier I had gotten a call that said, "Hey, you're nominated to get into the Hall of Fame." So boy, that's great and stuff, but never really heard anything else. So I said, okay. So then this past year in January, I get a call, a voicemail from Leon on my phone. He said, "Hey, congratulations, in the Hall of Fame." So I'm thinking it's the same thing that it was a couple years ago, that you've been nominated for it, but that you hadn't gotten in yet. So I get the message, so I call him up. I said, "Hey, Leon, what's going on?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, you got elected to the Hall of Fame." I said, "You're kidding, He said, "No." I said, "Oh, man, I was obviously so excited. It was unbelievable, really, heck of a deal."
I'm sure you've heard from many former teammates, maybe a former coach or two, but what was it like sort of reconnecting with people and also reconnecting with your memories of your playing days at Montana State?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's awesome, really. Now, the funny thing is, our class, we only had 8 seniors, that year that we went. So our class sort of went down, as we went on and stuff. But I've obviously got a real good friend here in Leon Potke. We were both from Warren, Ohio. We came out together and stuff and, played the 4 years, and the whole deal. And yeah, just talked to all different kind of guys. Coach Erickson, he was the freshman coach the year we were freshmen. Back then, freshmen were not allowed to play varsity. That was the last year that freshmen could not play varsity. So he was the head coach of our freshman team, which went undefeated, which was a heck of a deal. And then we played just 3 years. We didn't redshirt. Me and Leon and quite a few of the other guys, Dave Myers, he was from Toledo that came back also. And we played the 3 years, and then we were done. It was over. How now, guys, red shirt, gray shirt, all this kind of stuff, they make 6 years out of, possibility of 4 or maybe even 7, with when COVID was out there that year, So, but we were, a real tight-knit group and stuff, and just had obviously tremendous memories from, being out here when I came out on my visit, to being out here the 4 years, and, the friendships and stuff that I made here. Obviously, Montana's a great place to live. Obviously, you guys are being killed with all the, people moving into Bozeman now and stuff. In fact, I finally retired. I was in the league for 43 years playing and coaching, and I was hoping to, come back up and live up in Bozeman, but it's too expensive. You guys are too expensive up here now, so I'm going to have to stay down in Denver. So
catch the easy flights. You mentioned Ohio and the number of Pennsylvania, Ohio kids in the Bobcat program from the 50s all the way through the 70s and into the 80s. It's hard for people in contemporary football to sort of understand how big a deal the states of Ohio and Pennsylvania were when you were growing up. How do you describe what it was like to grow up in that environment as a football person in sort of the epicenter of the sport back then?
Right. What happened back then, that's when the steel mills were really going good and stuff. So, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, all in that area. I was from Warren. Leon was from Warren, too. We had Jim Boyle the next year. He came out from Niles. So we had, a deal like, for me, my senior year in high school, I was 6'2", 190 pounds. So obviously Ohio State's not looking at, somebody that small back then. And obviously the sizes are way different now, just totally different. But I graduated when I was 17 years old and actually played my freshman year at Montana State at 17. So I was young. I went to the kindergarten when I was, 4 and a half. So, it sort of hurts you, especially if you're a late bloomer. So by the time I got up to Bozeman in my freshman year, I actually got up to 212 pounds and was 6'3". So, if I'd have been, say, a year, ahead, possibly, the bigger schools would have said, hey, this guy, has a chance to get big enough. But 190 pounds, I wrestled at 190 pounds and the whole thing. So, but again, for me, it turned out to be the greatest thing in the world for me, coming up here in Bozeman. And like I said, with the friendships and the football, Coach Perrick was a head coach my first year, and then Coach Holland took over. I mean, we had, like I said, Dennis Erickson was here, Cliff Heisel, Don Christensen, Sonny Lubick. I mean, had a great staff. I mean, and so, football-wise, we didn't hurt at all by the coaching we got. We got as good as coaching as Ohio State, Michigan, Florida, all those schools. I mean, so it really turned out to be a great thing. And by the time I was a sophomore, I got up to 225 pounds. So, again, I started, filling in and maturing and stuff, and, which really ended up helping me.
When did you sort of come to the understanding that you were a potential professional football player?
Well, you really don't know, because, like I said, the size that I was, still even, and the guys weren't that big, back then. I mean, the year I came out in the draft, Too Tall Jones was in it. He's 6'9" and 300. John Dutton was another guy from Nebraska. He was 6'6", 270. There were some big guys. Carl Barzalauskas from Indiana, 6'6", 280. Well, I was 6'3" and a half. 250 pounds, so still was undersized compared to, some of the rest of the, bigger school, kids were. But, my sophomore year, I, had a good year, played the whole year, and I think I made the, all Big Sky, so you start thinking, hey, man, well, maybe I got a chance. But my junior year, I was up to 235 pounds, so again, and had a real good year my junior year. And, so I'm thinking, well, I might have a chance, to end up making the pros, because the scouts are coming in and they're weighing, measuring you, watching film and stuff. And then obviously by my senior year, I felt I had a, good chance. If I can end up, playing and, have a good year, there's no telling what could end up happening.
Yeah, in this day and age, you have scout sites, and everybody talks about the draft 2 years out. People are talking about this year's freshmen as draft prospects. What was the chatter like? When did it start? When did you start hearing from, say, scouts or from people in pro football?
Well, really, my junior year is when they think, and like you said, nowadays it's totally different, right? I mean, it's a whole new planet like we're on, compared to how it was back then. But my junior year, because I had a pretty good sophomore year, they started saying, hey, you got a chance to end up, playing in the league and this and that. And, I'd obviously watch, football, pro football all the time. Kurt Brandon was here. He was a year ahead of me, and he ended up going to the New England Patriots. And, so I'd always talk to him, and, hey, how was it? Gustafson, he was, I think, 2 years ahead of me, or maybe even 3 years ahead of me. And, so I'd end up talking to him, and, you just try to get an idea. Hey, how was it? What was the deal? And I remember Kurt Brandon, when he went to New England's mini camp, and they had a guy there by the name of John Hanna, who was out of Alabama, first-round pick, and he said, everybody's really just like us at Montana State. Everybody's saying there's only one guy that was different, and that was John Hanna. He said he had legs like were tree trunks. That were just unbelievable. And obviously, he was a real high first-round pick, and he's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame right now and stuff. But I think what happens, you end up realizing, hey, I can play with all these guys. It doesn't really end up mattering. You just got to be able to get it in your mind, that you can end up doing it. And, then when I had the opportunity to play in the bowl games, I decided to play in the East-West Shrine and the Senior Bowl. I could have played in the other two back then. I thought, well, Coach Holland felt it was probably best to maybe only play two of them instead of playing 4 weeks in a row, which really turned out to be a great decision also.
You won MVP of one of those All-Star games. What do you remember about that? That was a pretty big deal in these parts, I know.
Well, yes, the Senior Bowl's the biggest game that back then. In fact, if you got the MVP of the game, you end up winning a new car, which is the first car that I ever owned. So, which was a heck of a deal. But I remember, in the week before or 2 weeks before, we played out in San Francisco in the East-West Shrine game. And so, I'm playing against all the other, everybody, as good as players you can get and stuff. And, you're there and you're saying, hey, yeah, heck yeah, I can play with these guys. There's no big difference or whatever. So then I went to the Senior Bowl and had a really good week of practice, which is big down at the Senior Bowl. They've got all the scouts and coaches, and they've done it forever, And so I really had a good week of practice and stuff, getting to know the guys. One guy that I really got to know real well and became good friends with him was Lucius Selman. I'm sure you guys, have heard about the Selman brothers, from University of Oklahoma. There was Leroy, Dewey, and Lucius. And Lucius that year, we came out in the bowl game together and played in the Senior Bowl. And I remember him, he had a little hamstring, so he wasn't able to play quite as much as he wanted to. So I was, playing a little bit more and stuff. And I made some plays, and he'd come over and say, hey, man, keep going. Boy, you're doing a heck of a job. I say, thanks. And a little bit later, he said, go. He said, I'll tell you what, he said, make a couple more big plays, you're going to get MVP. I said, man, get out of here. I said, you got to be great, right? So I made another one, and he said, I'm going to tell you what, you make one more play, you're going to get MVP. So in the fourth quarter, I got another sack, and I came off to the sideline. I said, you're going to get the MVP. I mean, the guy's a great guy and everything, and just unbelievably, I end up, getting the MVP and won the car and the whole deal, and really was a heck of a deal. And I know at that time it was talking first or second round pick. They felt I'd at least go, the latest was a second round, and then having that game and, showing what I was able to do, in that game, I think it sort of helped boost me up into the first round.
What was the draft experience like for you? How did you find out you'd been drafted, and what was sort of the excitement around that?
Okay, so that year was the year of I think it was the WFL. But there was a new league that was coming in, and so the NFL was worried that somebody was going to sign. Well, they did. There were two running backs from California, I think the USC or UCLA. They signed with the new league about a week before the draft. So everybody went nuts in the NFL. So they sent like scouts to sit with the top 50 players. So me, Coach Holland, and this scout from the Dallas Cowboys are down in one of the hotels downtown Bozeman, and we're sitting there all day, from the morning until I end up getting drafted, right? So I get drafted by Cincinnati in the 23rd pick. And so I get on with the travel agent, and they said, well, look, they said, there's no flights coming back from Bozeman going east now, so you'll have to go out to Seattle, spend the night in Seattle, and then fly back to Cincinnati the next day. So that's what I did. I flew out to Seattle, spent the night in Seattle, flew back to Cincinnati the next day, met with Paul Brown, Mike Brown, the whole organization and stuff. And I had an agent by the name of Howard Slusher that was, my agent that I was going to end up using if I was a first or a second round pick. So I get back there, and they said, well, you don't have an agent. I said, no, I have an agent. I said, I told Howard Slusher I'd use him if I was either a first or second round pick. So they didn't really care for that much, but that's the way it goes. He was sort of known as a tough negotiator. So I'm there, and, we talk and stuff, and my parents came down and met me. They were, up in Warren, Ohio. So we go back, the Slusher said, okay, you can, go back now, because, it took forever to sign. So we drive back up to Warren, and Slusher calls me up when we get back up, because obviously no cell phones or anything then, so, you couldn't talk to anybody. So I get up there, and he's going, and he says, well, would you take this and this, for 3 years? I said, you better believe it. Well, he said, I got you this, which was more. So the next morning, we have to drive back down to Cincinnati, and I go down and sign the contract. So it's unbelievable, because they want to get it done before. They didn't want to. I was drafted first round by the Chicago Fire in that league, so they didn't want to end up getting a bidding war and stuff. So it turned out good for me. I had signed and was under contract and went. So it turned out to be a heck of a deal.
You obviously made your name and a brilliant reputation for your coaching career. But what do you remember about the early days of your playing career in Cincinnati and then later in Tampa Bay? What do you recall about that?
Well, that year, before we went to training camp, the college all-stars were supposed to play the Super Bowl champs in a game up in Chicago, all right? So we go up to Chicago, we're up there and stuff, and all of a sudden, that's the year that they were going to end up striking. They were going for a strike, so the Player Association was up there, and they're trying to end up, getting the players to strike. So me and Mike Webster, obviously the center from the Steelers, and a couple other guys, John McKay was the head coach. So we said, forget this strike. Heck, we don't want to end up striking. We want to play the game. So we went up to Coach McKay's office, up to his hotel room. He was up at the top, and we knock on the door, and he opens the door, and he's got his golf club sitting right there. He's going to have a good week, golfing and, everything. And we said, Coach, we want to play the game. We forget this strike. We want to play the game. He says, I really appreciate you guys. He said, but there's nothing we can do. It's the Player Association that's got to decide. Well, 2 days later, they sent us home. It was done. So we end up, going to training camp then, which back then you went to training camp like around July 4th, and you were in training camp forever. We had 6 preseason games, and only 14 regular season games, so it went forever. And, and we had quite a few veteran players that year striking. They were out on the picket line and all that kind of stuff. It was really, I think, the first true strike that the NFL did, And then finally it got sort of resolved and got going. But I remember against the same thing. You get used to playing against the same guys and stuff. And, okay, so now you feel good and everything. And now you're playing against the other team. That's why I like now how teams practice against each other is really invaluable because, you get a chance to play against somebody else instead of playing against the same guy every day in practice, to give you, a different look. But, really liked it. I end up starting, I'm trying to think, I'm not exactly positive how many games I started, but we had Mike Reed, who was a heck of a player, a Pro Bowl player, and this Ron Carpenter was another guy, one of the inside guys besides this guy by the name of Bob Brown. I know there was a bunch of Bob Browns, but this was the Bob Brown. Just a real bruiser, But, enjoyed it, and then, played 3 years there, and then I ended up messing up my foot. I missed like 12 games that next season and was traded down to Tampa. And, really, again, a heck of a break to where, all of a sudden you get a new lease on life because what happens when you get injured like that and you're unable to play and stuff, it's never looked good no matter what, for whatever reason. So I got down there and I was back now with Coach McKay. Remembers, believe it or not, when I went up to his office or his hotel room that day and talked to him and stuff. So I played 6 years down there with McKay, and then I actually coached. My first year of coaching was down in Tampa in 1984. Coach McKay hired me to end up playing. My career was ended when I tore my ACL in 1981 at the end of the season, and in 82 I was put on physically unable to perform because I couldn't play. I had a ACL that they didn't realize it was torn at the time, so it was never repaired. They repaired my cartilage, but not the ACL. So, and then, started my, coaching career, which again was a tremendous break for Coach McKay to hire me because back then they didn't do that stuff. When a guy got done playing and bring a guy in, to coaching, they didn't really do it. And I was lucky enough. Abe Gibran was a defensive line coach who I played for 6 years, used to be the head coach with the Bears. I, played for him, always got along real good with him, and he needed some help, so I helped him with the defensive line, and I coached the special teams that year. And then what happened, it branched me off. Coach McKay resigned at the end of the year that year, so I was done. So I went to Illinois with Mike White for 3 years, and I coached special teams and D-line, and then I went to Purdue for 2 years with Fred Akers and did the same, coach special teams and D-line. Then in 1990, I went with Jerry Glanville to the Atlanta Falcons.
You've obviously named some legendary coaches. John McKay is one of the biggest names all time in your profession. Who, as an NFL player, who are the coaches that really impacted you in terms of knowledge and maybe a desire to get into coaching?
Well, really Abe Gibran. I really like the guy. I think he got the most out of me. He was a sort of rough, gravelly guy. I don't know if you've ever seen old things. He's a guy that's really big and heavy set and, all this kind of stuff, but really liked him. We had, and at that time down there, we had Leroy Selman and Dewey Selman, on the team. Dewey was a linebacker and Leroy was a defensive end, and they I became really good friends with him because I played with Lucius in the Senior Bowl, and he had talked to him and all that kind of stuff. So, it just turned out to be, a great situation. And Leroy and Dewey and Lucius all can't have better people. They don't come better than that. And they were all great football players, but they were better people. And so really was good friends with them. So I would, learn a lot of stuff from Leroy, over the years when we played down there together. And then the 1 year that I end up, staying down there and coach him some and stuff. And we had Wally Chambers down there, who was a Pro Bowl defensive end, with the Chicago Bears, a first round pick. And, he was there and stuff. So as it went, you just sort of get a little bit from every guy, that you end up going. Obviously, my rookie year, Paul Brown was a head coach, and some people don't know Paul Brown. Well, I know I got a little age, so I know these older guys, but he's sort of in the same breath as Vince Lombardi and, George Halas and stuff like that. The guy was unbelievable, And it was just a heck of a deal. Like you said, Coach McKay, I mean, they don't get any better than that. I don't want to go too big. Like I was with Dan Reeves and, just had just a, really fortunate, playing career and then also coaching career.
When you think about growing up in Ohio, specifically, Paul Brown has to be at the pantheon of football stardom. What do you remember? What was it like for you to be in the same organization, the same room as him?
Well, it was funny because I think I know at one time he was the head coach at Massillon, which is, great. We played in the same conference back then. It was the All-American Conference, Niles, Massillon, Warren, Harding, Kent, McKinley, Steubenville, and Alliance. And so we played in the same conference, which was a heck of a deal. But what happens when you end up, going to the games, and I mean, we're playing in front of 15,000 people, back, in the 60s, late 60s and stuff. It ended up turning out to be a heck of a deal. Well, Paul Brown, as a head coach, he was sort of more like a stoic type guy. I mean, he wasn't one of those guys, he wasn't going to holler and chew you out and all that kind of stuff. He had his own way to go, but when he spoke, the players listened. I mean, there's no doubt. And like you said, that was his last year. I ran him out of coaching. I got there and he said, "Boy, I got to get rid of this guy. I'm done." But I mean, really, he was a heck of a guy, and obviously his son, Mike Brown, Paul Jr. and stuff, and it was a heck of a deal. We used to go the night before the game. The whole team would have to go to the movie theater, and we'd be watching, not the killer movies, Disney movies, love stories, stuff like that. It wasn't like, you're going like, I just saw Equalizer 3 the other day and holy smoke. It wasn't those kind of movies. We went and watched, the sort of mild kind, but really enjoyed playing for him. And like you said, he's an icon really. And, it was a really good time that one year that I was there.
When you think about the coaches you've worked with, played for, how do you put that staff at MSU in your time? How do you put that in that context of guys like Dan Reeves and John McKay and so on and so forth?
Oh yeah, to me, obviously, like Sonny Lubick, he went on and had a great career and stuff. Like Coach Holland, he didn't want to go anywhere else, right? He loved Montana State. He wanted to end up, staying here and stuff. But a lot of the coaches, sort of wanted to end up staying. But to me, they were as good as any staff, really. I mean, I felt that I got great coaching, when I was here, which obviously really ends up helping you, down the road, playing wise, and then also, the style that I took coaching wise. And like I said, my style was a lot sort of the Abe Gibran type because I really liked him and, really thought he did a heck of a job. But another guy that was here coached me as a freshman was Bill Emsick. He was also the wrestling coach, and he tried to get me to wrestle, and I'd wrestle a little bit. Who was he a bad dude? But really end up joining. I mean, I really can't have enough good things to say about Montana State. I really can't. I mean, it's just, except it's so expensive out here, you can't come out and live anymore now. So, but
through your time in the NFL, when people would learn that you're from Montana State, what was the reaction like, and what did you try to communicate to people about this place?
Well, I think, and what would happen, sometimes you get, which really makes you mad. Is that Missoula? I said, dude, that's University of Montana. I don't even want to hear that stuff, right? I mean, forget, Missoula. Montana State's a place. And I know we had a little rugged time there and stuff, but obviously now over the last, 8 years or whatever, I mean, we're at the top. There's no doubt. It's back up to the top. But I always spoke highly of it no matter what. I said, dude, if you'd go out there, you'd end up loving the place. I mean, it's a great place, the city and stuff. I know it's a lot bigger now than it used to be, a little different, but I said you can't beat it. Obviously, that little place, that Yellowstone Club up the road a ways, has sort of got some notoriety for, Bozeman and stuff also. But, yeah, I mean, to me, I've always been positive and I've always, loved it out here.
You go through your life as a player and then a coach, and you're just in the football life for all those so many years. How did you stay connected to this place through all those years of being still involved in football?
Well, you know how Jan Stender, who used to end up having that golf tournament out here, I don't know, he probably had it, 10, 11, 12 years or something. So I'd end up coming out every year, for the golf tournament and stuff, and, still see old friends, from before, and then meet new ones, just like now. You go back in 1970, when we first got here compared to now, 2023, a lot of people are gone, a lot of new people have come in and stuff, but the good thing is, it seems like, at least for the new people that I've met around here, are still sort of the same, seem to be homegrown, Montana people that are just really, good, wholesome people. That's the biggest thing that I end up seeing.
You had a unique experience here in that you played for a couple of years in Old Gatton Field.
Right.
And then you played one season at the high school.
Right.
And then moved in and opened up Reno Edge Sales Stadium. What are your thoughts and observations and recollections about all three of those different places?
Oh, I think if you think about it, it's really amazing. There's not too many college programs that had that like that, right? Like you said, where you played 3 different stadiums, and really like the Old Gatton Field, that was a heck of a thing. Didn't really care as much for the high school stadium there. And then getting to play here, the last year was, a heck of a deal. And obviously it's a lot different now, for what they've done here and stuff. They've done just an unbelievable job, with the stadium, the facility right here and stuff. And what it does, it helps you compete, with the others, schools in the FBS, or FBC that, are top, like North Dakota State, North Dakota, South Dakota State, all those, it gives you that chance. And obviously they got Daddy Warbucks over in Missoula that's been able to pump money into that place, forever. We don't have maybe quite as few. You might have Osheim and Hart might have that kind of money, but, not too many people have that kind of money that's, sitting at what he's done for that program over there with the facilities that they have.
What was the excitement like when you were getting ready to move into this new stadium?
Oh, I mean, you're just jacked up. You can't end up, waiting to play because, like you said, we played the high school stadium, we played the old Gatlin Field, and now all of a sudden, here's a new one, and this is probably going to be here for the next 30, 40 years or whatever, and you're hoping to be able to, christen it and have a good season, to take it on over Bobcat, over the history of it.
One last thing I want to ask you about is going to school at Montana State. Obviously, the campus and the school were different in your time, but what impacted you about getting the education from this place?
Well, I'll be truthful. I wasn't a great student, all right, and so I had a bunch of classes left to take when I went to the pros, So I left, and I mean, Herb Agox was my counselor, and so, we talk and this and that. And so when I got done playing, I said, well, I got to go back and get my degree. I said, there's no doubt about it. I got to get my degree because I wanted to get into coaching. And really, if you're coaching in college, you have to have a degree. If you're in the pros, it doesn't matter. But, for college. So I remember I was done. I came back. I go up to Coach Agox, and I said, Herb, I said, I'm going to finish my degree. And you're like, what? So he said, okay, so he gets the stuff out and he starts going over stuff. He said, boy, he said, you got a long way to go. I said, I know, so let's get into it now. So it actually took me 4 quarters to end up getting my degree, and I got it in PE, and, it again, turned out to be the best thing ever, to be able to go back and get it and actually realize, if you put a little more effort in that study, and sometimes that stuff comes a heck of a lot easier than it is if you're not, So obviously when I was first here, I wasn't a great student, but when I came back, I did a lot better and ended up getting my degree and was really proud of it.